Okay, I'd like you to turn to 1 Peter chapter 2. Therefore, putting aside all malice and all deceit and hypocrisy and envy and all slander, like newborn babes, long for the pure milk of the word, so that by it you may grow in respect to salvation, if you have tasted the kindness of the Lord. There's a number of things we're to set aside. When you set something aside and say, I'll come back to that later, it's not that sort of setting aside. It's setting aside like a bad gallbladder. You need to get it surgically removed and set it aside so that it will never trouble you again. It's that sort of setting aside that he's talking about here. And the point that he's making about the malice and the envy and so forth are very, very important, because these are what we deem to be small little things of really no significance or account. Malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, slander, and so forth. The thing is, though, is there any one of us who hasn't been guilty of committing these sins even after we became Christians? I know we did before we became Christians, but even after we became Christians. These are troublesome sins. They keep coming back. They keep rising their ugly head, and we've got to keep dealing with it. Ignoring it is not the way to deal with it. You've got to move in, and you've got to take radical action to stop it in the head when it comes into the head, rather than musing on it, rather than feeding it, rather than letting it develop into a sin in your life, which, incidentally, might look small, but like the mustard seed, it can grow into a great tree. It can cause the destruction of your whole life. And that means the happiness in your life, and it can rob you of eternal life as well. So, although we're considering small things, it's in keeping with what is said in Luke 16 verse 10, he who is faithful in very little is faithful also in much. If we can get the small things right, it's like that saying, when watch the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. There's an element of truth in all of those statements. If we look at the small things and deal with the small things, then when it comes to major issues, we've got the small things right. We've got them right. We've got shown the self-control, and for that reason, we are prepared for bigger temptations. This all arose out of what we were reading on Wednesday night, Genesis chapter 37. It says in verse 2, these are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. The idea of a bad report is, there's some light shed on that in 1 Samuel 2:22. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 22. Let's have a look there. It says, now Eli was very old, and he heard all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who served at the doorway of the tent of meeting. He said to them, why do you do such things, the evil things that I hear? from all these people. No, my sons, for the report is not good which I hear the Lord's people circulating. And then he goes on with the point. So the brothers, who were more grown up than he was now, out looking after the sheep. All the indications are, since they went to Shechem and then on to Dothan later on, that they were going far away from the family circle and from the oversight of Jacob, the father, and they were breaking away from him. That's a natural process. But what happens is, out of sight, out of mind, and if you're of the flesh, or you've got your mind centered on your selfish desires and the things that you want, you're going to get yourself into trouble. Because you're without restraint, you think nobody can see, nobody knows, we'll just do what I feel like doing right now. And so, drink, drugs, immorality, all the other stuff become almost an impossible temptation to resist. So these boys were doing wrong things. And Joseph, who was younger, felt like, this is not right. These fellas shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to tell my father. And anyway, he was his father's messenger, and he was his father's confidant. So he thought by telling his father, no doubt, that he was doing a good job, that he was looking after the family and making sure that things wouldn't go too far astray. Anyway, that annoyed the brothers, obviously. It annoyed the brothers. Now it says in verse 3, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a vari-coloured tunic. His brothers saw that the father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Now, I was trying to think about this, and this young fella, Joseph, he was spiritually minded. Let me get that out straight away. He was spiritually minded. Chances are that he was close to his dad. He was a bright lad. He was a hard worker. He had leadership qualities. He got things done. He was honest, forthright, interested. He had a lot of good qualities. And I can see the father warming to him because of these good qualities. And if he asked them to do something, it got done. And it got done well. It wasn't a half-hearted effort. It was a real effort at doing it right. Jacob could tell him about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and probably the young fellow was very interested, seeing that he was spiritual, to know what the history of God's people had been up to this point, and how God helped them throughout their lives, and how God protected them, and the standards that they had lived by, and all that sort of thing. He was obviously very interested in that. So he would listen to Jacob, and Jacob's story about the old days when he had gone up to Padan Aram, and how he found his wife, and how the Lord looked after him while he was there under Laban, and all that sort of thing. So, you see, he favoured him, but there were probably not just the fact that he was the son of his favourite wife, but this was a nice young fella. This young man was somebody you could warm to, somebody you could trust, somebody you could even talk to. But the brothers, instead of seeing the qualities and saying, he's a good young fella, he's a good man, they just took offence at that, and they hated him. They hated him because Jacob showed favoritism to him, and of course that wasn't right. But this is easy to judge and to condemn from a distance. It's very hard when it's in your own family. Very difficult. All right, so here we have him, the brothers hating him already. And then he had a dream. Listen to this. Joseph, verse 5, had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. And he said to them, please listen to this dream which I had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaves rose up and stood erect, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. Then his brothers said to him, are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. But poor Joseph, being as naive as he was and as forthright as he was, he couldn't help telling them about another dream, which is just provoking them right to their face. And he does that in the next few verses. And he talks about the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowing down to him. And he related it to his father and his brothers. And of course, the father even took offense. Shall I and your mother, he says in the middle of verse 10, and your brothers actually come and bow down before you to the ground? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the sayings in mind. Just as Mary kept those sayings in mind about Jesus, he kept them in mind because maybe this was God talking to his son and revealing something about his future, because he would have seen his son as destined for great things. And I'm sure he was hopeful that he would be destined for great things in God's eyes as well. So this would have meant something to him. But here, these dreams, given, I believe, given as a prophecy by God to Joseph to tell him that he was going to be a leader and that they were going to bow down before him. Now, of course, he could have kept this to himself or just told his dad privately, but he didn't. He wanted the notoriety. He wants to know, I'm better than you boys. I'm going to be someone. You're nothing. You're just out there looking after sheep in the field, and I'm going to be great, and you're going to be bowing down before me. So we need to watch. I think the lesson, of course, is we need to watch whatever gifts and talents or whatever good things have come into your life. Be careful how you tell other people about them, because you can either get them to be happy for you or you can provoke them to envy and jealousy. And this is what happened here with the brothers. Now, we all know the story about him going up to the brothers who are far away, shepherding the sheep, and when they saw him coming, they decided they're going to kill him. They decided they were going to kill him. I think it's necessary for us to say something here about jealousy and envy, because jealousy and envy, if I'm right, comes out of pride and covetousness, or maybe just selfishness. You might not think of the pride so much as in your life, but you can know or acknowledge that you're selfish and that you're covetous. You want things. You want more than you've got. You want what other people have, and you're looking at what they have in a bad way. So it comes from pride and selfishness, or covetousness, I should say. Then out of that pride and covetousness comes jealousy. Now there's a good and bad jealousy. We can be jealous for what is good in a person's life and want what they want and work towards getting what they have in our lives. The jealousy can motivate us for good, to change for good. But jealousy slips over into envy very quickly. Now, envy is just out and out wicked. It's wicked because it's a mean feeling. It's a feeling of resentment and hostility, and it builds anger. So here we have jealousy, envy, bitterness. There's bitterness in envy. There's strife in envy. There's anger in envy. There's hatred in envy. And there's murder. These are the expression of envy. So you might be angry at somebody, and you might be blaming them for this, that, and the other. And the truth be known, what's really wrong with you is that you're envious. In other words, you need to start examining, why am I angry with that person? Why do I resent them? Why do I feel hurt by them? And you need to start asking yourself the question, why? Because if you don't, that bitterness and that strife will increase, that anger will become stronger, the hatred will become endemic. I know for Edom, the Esau's descendants, they hated the children of God. They hated them because they were jealous of them and envious of them. And they were bitter towards them. And it worked out. When God says, Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated, there was very good reason for that. That's not just a wild statement like, these have done nothing wrong, but I hate them anyway. I'd like you to see in Ezekiel 35 what sort of thing went wrong with Edom, and why the Lord would hate them. Verse 5 of chapter 35, because you have had everlasting enmity and have delivered the sons of Israel to the power of the sword at the time of their calamity, at the time of the punishment of the end. And jump down now to verse 10. Because you have said, these two nations, that's northern Israel and southern Israel, these two nations and these two lands will be mine, and we will possess them, although the Lord was there. Therefore, as I live, declares the Lord God, I will deal with you according to your anger and according to your envy, which you have showed because of your hatred against them. So I will make myself known among them when I judge you. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have heard all your revilings, which you have spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying, they are laid desolate, they are given to us for food. And you have spoken arrogantly against me, and have multiplied your words against me. I have heard it. He says, you got jealous and envious, and you built up the bitterness and the hatred in your heart, and nothing will turn you away from that. That has gone on for centuries. And every opportunity that you have had as a nation, you've done my people wrong. You've envied their land and wanted to possess it as your own, even though you know God says, I have given it to Israel. They railed against the God of Israel as well, and God heard it. So what I'm trying to say to you is how easy it all can turn so sour, whether in a family or in a nation. And the same treatment has to be found to withstand it, whether it's in a nation or in a family. What we have to do is we've got to set aside that envy. We've really got to set that aside. If you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. It's of the devil. It's of the demons. It's not from God. So if here you're making claim to be a Christian of an honest heart and of an upstanding character, and envy is, you're riddled with envy and jealousy and bitterness and hatred, you just can't be, it just can't be right. You're a living contradiction, and you're denying your faith, and you're living contrary to God's will in that matter. Now, how would I know whether that's going on in your head or not? And how would you know if it was going on in my head? Well, you wouldn't know until the actions, either verbally or physically, manifest themselves. But that's how sinister it is. By the time you see it, it's already too late. The explosion has happened. And that's why we've got to try and work on, these brothers needed to work on this. They needed not to be so selfish, but because they were selfish and fleshly brothers and interested only in the world revolving around them, not interested in seeing the good in anybody else. They ended up with this attitude of heart, and they really were going to kill the young man. They threw him into that cistern with the intention of taking his life. Now, had Reuben, the eldest brother, not talked them out of it, and then Judah not made a suggestion when he saw the Ishmaelites and the Amalekites caravan passing by to sell him as a slave rather than to kill him, which they did. But while he was in that tomb, they were eating and drinking. It's like nothing going on here. When they sold him into slavery, they hatched a plan to deceive the father, dipping the coat into the blood of an animal and bringing it home and asking him, "Is this your son's coat?" And he immediately jumps to the conclusions, he's dead. He's been torn to pieces by a wild animal. And he grieved, so much so that they couldn't stop him grieving. Just a little point on that too. If you're given information and made to jump to certain conclusions on insufficient information or wrong information, his sorrow was as deep as if it were real. The child wasn't, and the young man wasn't dead. But nevertheless, it still had the same impact. The lie had the same impact on the father as if he were dead. So be careful what you say. Lies can devastate lives. I hope I got the lies and the lives differ from each other. All right. Well, fortunately, the brothers did sell him. I was looking at Genesis chapter 44, where Joseph comes along and he talks to them and he tells them, where is it? Oh, 45 here. So Joseph said to his brothers, "I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." So they were guilty, and their jealousy made them, and our envy made them guilty. All right, let's look at another story that is rather interesting. Psalm 73. In verse 2, Asaph, who wrote this psalm, and this Asaph lived in the time of David, but it seems like that he started it's like a dynasty that of singers and poets in the frame of David's poetry and Israel's poetry and songs. And this may be a descendant of Asaph, and he belonged to the guild that was in the descendants of Asaph. Anyway, he says, "But as for me, my feet came close to stumbling. My steps had almost slipped, for I was envious of the arrogant as I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there was no pain in their death, and their body is fat. They are not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like mankind. Therefore pride is their necklace. The garment of violence covers them. Their eyes bulge, or their eye bulges from fatness. The imagination of their heart run riot. They mock and wickedly speak of oppression. They speak from on high. They have set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue parades through the earth. His people return to this place. The waters of abundance are drunk by them. They say, how does God know? And is there knowledge with the Most High? Behold, these are the wicked, and always at ease. They have increased in wealth. Now here's a godly man, a man that belongs to the priesthood. And he finds himself now in a very selfish mode. He's only thinking about himself, and he's looking and he's saying, what am I doing being a righteous man, trying to be a good person? What in the world am I thinking of? Look at those guys. Look at them. Their eyes are bulging because of fatness. Everything's going well for them. They've no troubles like other people have troubles. They're all living in abundance and luxury. And my life is miserable. Look what he says in verse 13. Surely in vain I've kept my heart pure and washed my hands in innocence. For I've been stricken all day long and chastised every morning. He says, my life is just one chastisement after another, one problem after another, one difficulty, stressful. Everything just seems to go wrong for me and mine, and I'm sick of it, and I'm not going to take any more of it. I've made efforts here to be pure in heart. I've washed my hands in innocence and offered my sacrifices and worship God. And where has it got me? Nowhere. I'm just a mess here. My life is a mess. Why should I keep this up? What is the point in driving myself? Ever get to feeling that way? Maybe not as strongly as I put it over here, but have you not felt that way in your heart? But he starts to think about the situation. If I had said, I will speak thus, behold, I would have betrayed the generation of your children, God's children. He's starting to come to his senses now. He's starting to think, well, if I go that road now, I'm just betraying not only myself and the family, I'm betraying the whole nation. I'm betraying generations to come. When I pondered to understand this, it was troublesome in my sight until I came into the sanctuary of God. Then I perceived their end. Whose end? The wicked person's. The one who's at ease in life. The one who's been successful in life. The person who seems to have it all. And no problems befall them like the problems that we have. I perceive their end. Surely you set them in slippery places. You cast them down to destruction. How they are destroyed in a moment. They are utterly swept away by sudden terrors. Like a dream when one awakes. O Lord, when aroused, you will despise their form. On the judgment day, Jesus is going to say to these people, depart from me, I never knew you. I never knew you. I don't want to know you now. And for all eternity, you're a reject as far as I'm concerned. You have lost the plot. You didn't know that you were created to serve me. Now I will not serve you anymore. Go. And go to the place that you've worked so hard to be in. We've got to start thinking in terms of eternity. Otherwise we won't get a measure on this life at all. I've asked before, who would you rather be when dying? The rich man who feasted and lived in luxury all of his life, or the poor man, Lazarus, who had barely the crumbs from the table of the rich man to eat? The dogs even licking his sores. Sure, I wouldn't want a life like Lazarus. I'll admit that. I'll admit that. But come the day of my death, I would rather have been a Lazarus than a rich man. Because that is the defining moment as to what I did with my life and how I rebelled against God, or either trusted God and loved God no matter what has befallen me in life. That's what has to happen with us. We've got to be ready for that. We have to perceive their end, and their end is removal from God's presence, from love, from light, from goodness, from truth, from holiness, from all those people who love what is righteous, a removal from all of that to be with the wicked in darkness forever and ever and ever. He says, my heart was embittered, in verse 21, and I was pierced within when I was senseless and ignorant. I was like a beast before you. Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You have taken hold of my right hand. With your counsel you will guide me, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And besides you I desire nothing on earth. God is that's the answer. Do I want to be with God? Is God precious enough to me? Is his Son, his divine Son who died for me and loves me so greatly, not the be-all and end-all for me? Can I not cope with everything that comes because that relationship is right? Is the nearness of God your God? My God? What is your God? So ask yourself, what is my God? What am I doing here in this earth? Why am I here? What is it all about? Is it about me? Well, if it becomes all about you, you are open to jealousy and envy and bitterness and strife and hatred and murder. And murder. Don't think you couldn't kill somebody. You can. Given the right circumstances, any of us can do it. Any of us can do it. We need to make sure as Christians we never give ourselves either the right circumstances or the right thoughts to accomplish that end. Just one thing about the envy I want to say to you. It's not just a problem with the wicked. It can be your best friend. It can be your sister, your brother. It can be the next door neighbour. It can be fellow Christians that you're envious of. Like the smallest things can be a matter of envy for us because we feel at a disadvantage. Somebody's got something I haven't got and I want it. And I have to have it. And they make me feel inferior. And there's always an element of inferiority when you start getting jealous and becoming envious. Always an element there. The only thing that will stop that from happening is if you humble yourself before God so as to let God exalt you. God's promised if you humble yourself before him, he will exalt you. It's the only attitude of heart that is given to being exalted without destroying the person who's being exalted. That's why Joseph could become the second in command in Egypt without him being destroyed, because he was a humble man. He trusted God. He wanted to do what was right. And so it will be with us. You know, we can be envious of money a good job that somebody has, skills that they possess, which I don't possess, promotions which they would get, which I hadn't got. They've got a better house, they've got good looks, that I haven't got, great physique, which I haven't got, a good singing voice, a stupid thing is like that, talent, success, dynamic personality, better education, not to mention a myriad of other small things that provoke us to envy. This is where it really matters, because when we get a grip on it on this level, we can control it. But if we allow ourselves the license to be envious on about any of these things, we are doing ourselves irreparable damage and allowing that to develop in our lives. Envy truly is rottenness to the bone, and it's like a cancer. Once it gets in, it takes very severe treatment to try and remove it so as you can become healthy again. You would think it only works from people who are at a disadvantage. It's not true. It's not true. And we can see this in the religious application of envy. Matthew 27, verses 17 and 18. So when the people gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that because of envy, they had handed him over. These Pharisees and Sadducees and lawyers, they were on the top of the pile. These were the educated ones. These were the ones who were successful, well-learned, well-educated. They had the power in their hands because of their position among the people as a teacher of the law. And they did know the law. They had a pedigree of being the sons of Abraham. They had the knowledge of being part of the chosen Israel, the chosen by God, Israel, God's people. And yet, with all of that, it looks like how could anybody in that position be envious of anybody else? They were envious of Jesus because they saw him as a threat to their power and authority. They were jealous or envious because Jesus had the goodwill of the people and multitudes followed him. They even got up early in the morning to come to hear him in the temple teaching. And the green eye of envy just raised or opened itself to all of this. And the Pharisees envied him. They were bitter towards him. They wanted to argue with him. All of this was because of the envy. All of these trick questions that they were putting to him was to bring him down and belittle him in front of everybody, because they were trying to break a hold that he had on the people, which they wanted for themselves. It's hard to credit. It's hard to credit. But there you go. It shows you. Even in the Old Testament, there's an excellent example of this. Numbers chapter 12. Of course, there's more than one. I have to restrict myself. Time is short. Numbers chapter 12. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, "Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?" And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than any man who was on the face of the earth. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses and Aaron and to Miriam, "You three come out to the tent of meeting." So the three of them came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the doorway of the tent. And he called Aaron and Miriam. When they had both come forward, he said, "Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, shall make myself known to him in a vision. I shall speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, even openly, and not in dark sayings. And he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant, against Moses? So the anger of the Lord burned against them, and he departed. Of course, when he did, Miriam was found to be leprous, as white as snow, and she must have been the instigator of this whole business. And notice how they don't really reveal what the problem is, that they were envious of Moses, wanted what he had. They wouldn't say that, no, he married a Cushite woman. Now, I don't know whether that Zipporah had died and he married another woman, a Cushite woman. But at this stage, there was nothing to forbid that. And he had every right to marry whoever he wanted to. So they were blaming it on this woman. Maybe they were envious. Miriam was envious because now instead of talking to his sister, Moses was talking to his wife, and she was advising him and listening to his problems and interacting with him in the way that maybe Miriam had at one stage, or even Aaron had at one stage. But whatever the circumstances, they decided to challenge what the Lord had established. When we challenge the Bible, we challenge what the Lord has established. Whether it's the elders in the congregation, the organization of whether it's the Lord's Supper, whatever it is, any teaching, if we challenge this envy thing now and say, well, I don't think much of that, and I don't believe that, and you just leave me alone. I'm happy enough the way I am. Don't start giving me a guilty conscience about this, hard enough as it is in life to do it. Yeah, okay, go ahead, do it. That's what you want to do. But you're not challenging me. You're challenging the Lord. Who do you think you are? I think she learned her lesson. Didn't happen anymore. Well, it did with some other people, but it didn't happen with them anymore. And anyway, she was a prophetess. She led the women in worship when they crossed the Red Sea. Aaron was the high priest. He was the intercessor for the nation. They both had major jobs to do in the work that God had given them. And yet they weren't satisfied with that. They wanted Moses' position. But God had put him there for good reason. God had put him there for good reason. And God treated him in a very special way. Maybe that was part of the jealousy as well, because God spoke face to face with Moses. But wasn't that a blessing for everybody? Was Moses trying to exalt himself above everybody? Was he not just giving them the law of God? Was he not leading them and judging them according to God's righteousness? Do you think Aaron, a weak Aaron, would have done a better job than Moses? Do you think Miriam as a woman would have done a better job as Moses? Envy, look, is a work of the flesh. Once we identify that, we've identified the problem. Look at Romans 1:29 to 32. Being filled with all unrighteousness. This is when they had broken with God. Being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. And although they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but also give hearty approval to those who practice them. There's lots of other scriptures. 1 Corinthians 3, 1 through 6, 2 Corinthians 12, 20 to 21, Galatians 5, 19 to 21, James 3, 13 through 16. All of them identifying envy as a work of the flesh. It is not of God, it is of ourselves, and its source is what is natural to us, what is demonic in the spiritual world. And if we don't check it, we are in great trouble. The thing to do, of course, is to put on the Lord Jesus and make no provision for the flesh. Romans 13, verse 14. We need to humble ourselves before God so that God will exalt us. We need to be content with what we have. Just look at that in Proverbs 30, verse 8, where he makes a prayer to God with regard to the material things. And he says this, I think it's very good. He says, keep deception, verse 8, and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, that I not be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or that I not be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. He isn't looking for much. He's just asking God, give me what I need. Give me what I need so that I don't rob because I haven't got enough, or so that I don't deny you having too much, thinking I'm self-sufficient. And so it is that if we've food and clothing, let us be content. So that's the message. That's the message. But again, it's a very important message. And if you read 2 Chronicles 36, and I'm not going to do it now, I want you to do it if you get a chance, and see how the children of God knew all of these things. But over long periods of time, they let it all slip and worked back into the fleshly mindedness that caused their destruction and downfall. And so it was then, and so it is now, and so it will always be until the world ends. What are you going to do about it in your life? I'll leave it with you. I need to turn on some of these.